Hi, I'm Julia Hankins. I'm a children's wellbeing consultant and also the founder of Wellbeing Adventurers. I also work with kids yoga teachers to support them through mentoring, training, and resources. And also in videos like this. So today I'm going to be talking about behaviour across the year. So whenever I work with kids yoga teachers, a behaviour team seems to be a really big thing that we work on together. And it seems to be a real challenge for kids yoga teachers, particularly if they're either have not worked with children before or they've worked with children but in a different kind of setting or in a different way. I think being a kids yoga teacher is a very different kind of relationship that we need to foster with the children in our care. And so yeah, I've been working with children since 1997. Yeah, really that long. Really that long. That's when I was training to be a teacher. And the BAQTS that I did, we spent quite a lot of time in schools across our training. So from 1997 onwards, I was in school learning to be a teacher. Yeah, and then being a teacher and then being a kids yoga teacher. And so in that very long time, I've discovered that there are actually certain times of the year that I think of as like crunch points where children's behaviour can be more challenging. And this is just a pattern that I've noticed in my own experience. I'm intrigued to know whether this holds true for other people, whether you find this too. In the people who I mentor, I seem to see similar patterns with them too. So I'm really intrigued to know, is what I'm saying ringing true for you? And is there anything that you've noticed to do with behaviour that I haven't mentioned today? So in my personal experience, and it's very personal, I've found the following times to be really tricky when it comes to managing behaviour of children. So firstly, at the very beginning of a term, and when I say term, that could be the beginning of the year, it could be the beginning of an actual term, or it could be the beginning of a series of lessons that you're having, so a sequence of classes that you're having. And so this goes two ways. It could be that the first class, the kids are like, oh, you're new, what can I get away with, or it could be that they're like, oh, this is a new situation and I'm just going to observe and see what how the land lies. And then maybe in the second or the third class you'll then start to see little whispers of challenging behavior starting to happen. And so I feel like that beginning, the first like from the first few lessons, like 1 to 3 lessons, are really, really important for establishing your boundaries and for children to know who you are, what you're about, and what you'll accept and what you won't accept. And I find that even if I've been teaching children for a really long time, which I have, the schools that I'm in, I've been teaching for such a long time now, but still at the beginning of each term it's the same. It's like they've had a holiday and they've completely forgotten. They're like, is this still an issue for you? Do I still have to do this? So they'll test those boundaries at the beginning of the term or the beginning of a sequence of lessons. I've also found that this is the case at the end of a term too. And I think this is because they're getting tired, they're a bit over it. And I'm getting tired too, and I've had my children of my own and I have my own stuff going on. And so the end of term, I am less able to cope. They are less able to cope. Everybody's window of tolerance is just that little bit smaller. And so I find this particularly true of the winter term. So in the UK, that is the term leading up to our Christmas holiday, our winter break. And the reason for that is because it's a particularly long term. Over the 3 terms of the year, generally speaking, in most schools, the winter term is the longest. And so sometimes that run up to Christmas, the kids can be in school for like 7 weeks and it can just feel really long. And so that's the case too for the summer term. So the end of the winter holiday, the end of the summer holiday, both of those, the summer term, sorry, they can feel really challenging because the kids are just tired, they're just really tired and they've had enough and you've had enough. And so Yeah, you might find there's a video that I've done about that actually. In fact, there's a video I've done about most of these top tips for the first kids yoga class of the term, and also end of term kit tips for kids yoga classes. So check out those two videos. You might find those useful if what I've said resonates. The summer term, I spoke about this last week. So if you watch these sequentially, and you watch it every week, which I know some people do, you will know my thoughts on the summer term. I feel like the summer term just generally can be a real challenge when it comes to behaviour, and something to just be aware of. Another thing that impacts the behaviour of the kids in my classes is any kind of disruption or change. So it could be that those children are being taught by a different teacher, even if this is not in a school class. You see, even if your classes are community classes, if the children have got changes happening in other parts of their lives. So, for example, a new teacher or teaching assistant, or the teacher's absent, or if there's changes in the way that things are done in school, or there's changes in ways things are done at home, if there's any disruption at home, just general changes to timetables, just disruption and changes in general, both within the children's school day, whether you're part of that school day or not, it will rumble on and it will impact your classes, or also whether it's changes in their home life, any sort of disruption or change to the routine, or it could be a change in your class. You know, it could be that you are experiencing some changes in your class, and the way that that runs, either with the timing or the way that you're organising it, or with the venue that you're in. Any sort of disruption and change is going to ruffle things for the children. And some other things that I found impact kids' behaviour is full moons and windy days. It just is. In my experience, it just is. Curious to know if that's the case for you too. For windy days, and a windy day on a full moon, they're like, ah, you know, it's that feeling of like running down a hill, you know. That's what it feels like to me anyway. Or maybe that's just me, maybe that's my own energy. So I do have some tips for these times. Firstly, knowledge is power. So if you predict it and you expect it, then you're much more prepared to deal with it. So maybe highlight in your planning the weeks that may be more challenging, and ensure that you're well reserved energetically and that you're well prepared for the lesson. So for example, if you've got a whole series of lessons, if you plan them in advance like I do, you might find my planning grids helpful there. I've got a freebie, I'll link it down below, which is planning grids. Yeah, I think it's called 3 types of plan, my long term, my short term, and my medium term plans. And I tend to plan a whole series of lessons in. I will look at the beginning ones and at the end ones and be like, okay, these are the ones where behavior may be a little bit more tricky. So what am I going to do there? And so, yeah, be prepared for the lesson, and also be ready to mix up and change anything that needs changing. So you may have a few different ideas in place for what you'd like to teach, and you may change them within the lesson, and that's totally fine. Another tip that I have at this time is be compassionate for the children in your class, because they're not choosing their behavior. Children are never actually choosing their behavior. I talk about this a lot more in my training, Tame the Crowd Without Being Loud. I go into quite a bit more detail about why children act the way they do. I look at the neuroscience and the psychology behind it. But basically, the takeaway point is children aren't choosing it. They're not choosing to mess around. They're responding to their surroundings in the way that they can. So try and be compassionate with them, however irritating it is. And also be compassionate with yourself. So sometimes kids are irritating, they just are, and sometimes they annoy us, and that's normal and it's okay. And just because you're a kids yoga teacher doesn't mean that you can't feel irritated. Obviously, you know, consider how you're going to express that to the children, but it's all right to feel annoyed, you know. And so my last tip is to seek out support if you need it. And so whether that's in my supportive Facebook group, which is Cool Yoga Teachers, or whether that's mentoring with me or accessing some more training. There are places that you can go to seek some support. And if you're feeling that the need for it, if you're feeling really down and low, if you're starting to be harsh on yourself, then perhaps it's time for you to seek out some support in those cases. So yeah, check out, I've got a free video playlist which is all about behaviour, managing behaviour positively, and so check that out. I've got lots of videos all on that. Check out the free poster and guide. This is a rules poster and how I do it. And also there's a course called Tame the Crowd Without Being Loud, which I've recently done quite a few updates to. So it's a whole it's an e-course that you can access, lifetime access. So as long as the course is available, you will have access to it. And in there, there's different modules, there's different lessons. And so all of the videos are fairly short, and you can just come at them in any way that feels right for you, and, pick and choose things as and when you need them. And if you're watching it and you think, well, actually this doesn't answer my question, you can email me a question. I will answer your question and I will add it into the course. So if it doesn't do what you want it to, let me know and I'll help you. So yeah, this comprehensive course, Tame the Crowd Without Being Loud, is currently £35. That price is increasing to £47 on the 1st of June. And the reason it's increasing is because of how much more I've added into it. And so it better reflects the offer, it better reflects what's included. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please please subscribe, please click the bell so you get notifications of any other videos I post. Email me, julia@juliahankins.co.uk. Comment any comments, I'd love to know. Does the full moon and do windy days impact behaviour in your classes too, or is it just me? I'd love to know. Thanks for watching.